Hi, I'm Caroline Barfoot. I'm Head of Student Experience. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update about the support that we're giving students around the pandemic and how we've adapted to, largely speaking, not being on campus, most students not being on campus.
We're really proud of the way the library team has continued to support Solent students throughout the pandemic.
So we're offering all of our student experience, student support services remotely, and that seems to be working really, really well. So for the hub, for example, which normally would be open between 8:30 and 5, so people could drop in with their questions. We're using phones and emails for that. And just to let you know, since September, we've answered over 11,000 emails and taken over 5,500 calls.
We have seen a real downturn in the numbers of memberships for our societies this year, which is really compounded by the fact they're unable to do any physical activity on campus. So we are encouraging them to do things virtually. We have provided virtual opportunities, and our refreshers fair next week is all virtual. However, that does cause them issues financially about raising membership funds to be able to sustain themselves next year. So we are exploring different options to help fund them to make sure that they can sustain their operations, and those opportunities are available to students next year.
When we first went into the lockdown back in March 2020, the library was spending approximately 90% of the resources budget on digital materials anyway. So fortunately for us, that shift to online learning and teaching really wasn't a massive stretch in terms of resource provision.
We've also been able to move some of our forms online. So one of our key forms, which is a to whom it may concern letter for the bank, people like that, we were able to move that online with the help of IT across the summer, and we've had over 5,500 downloads of those letters. So students have been able to do that themselves, which is really good.
What's even more reassuring is to see that the students have really been engaging well with those resources across the whole of the lockdown period. So when we look at the ebook usage, for example, between October and December 2020, we saw something in the region of 150,000 ebook accesses. That's roughly 60% up on the same period in 2019.
The other thing we are seeing is an increased uptake of the use of our advice service, which has transitioned to be completely online for students. We've seen a 49% increase in case numbers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it does mean that students are reaching out to us for support.
We were delighted to have the library building open between August and December last year. The popularity of the library as a communal learning space, I think everybody who works at Solent recognises that. It was difficult that we had to restrict numbers in the way we did to comply with the social distancing requirements. So we were seeing probably about 100 students coming through the building on a typical busy day in the autumn of 2020. That's nothing anywhere near the numbers we would have seen a year earlier when October, November, the library would have been open 24/7 and we would have seen between 1,200 and 1,500 students across the course of the day back then.
In terms of other services like the therapy and mental health team, for example, they're working either through phone or they're doing Zoom calls with students. They've done over 1,131 appointments. That was up to a couple of weeks ago.
Students have increased level of loneliness due to the pandemic just because they weren't able to interact with people the way they were supposed to. They weren't able to engage with each other the way they were supposed to, and due to that, basically their mental health levels have dropped. We're dealing with that. And I think our events and our workshops and everything that we're doing in the STU have helped at least a bit to those students who are feeling lonely. And we've connected many students to the mental health services.
We're able to offer an appointment to a student who self-refers to us within 3 to 5 working days. So we're really pleased about that. And actually a student will get a call back from a self-referral just to check how they are within 24 hours.
The feedback that we had from the students just confirmed how valuable that space was to them. They'd been stuck staring at the same four walls for so long in 2020. It was just a huge relief for them to be able to come into the library building again and get their heads down and do some work. For those of them who were living alone, there were other people around. The library team are very friendly and engaging. So, when students were arriving and we were checking them in, it was an opportunity just to have a chat with them, to make sure that they were doing okay, to remind them about the other services that were still available to them, the different support that was available to them across the university as well. well.
All students who test positive for COVID, again, are called by one of the mental health and therapy team straight away as soon as we know about to check that they're okay. And interestingly enough, most of the people we call who have tested positive with COVID are actually okay. They're mostly feeling a bit poorly, they're not very ill luckily, but they're quite resilient about it.
We were all struck by the tremendous resilience and good humour of the students who were coming into the building. Every time they moved, we were getting them to sanitise their hands, we were nagging them to make sure that they wore their face coverings whenever they were in the building. And they took it all in their stride so well. Their good humour shone through. I think we were all blown away by how positive they were able to be in the face of such challenging circumstances.
And our students have been really, really good. I have a regular meeting with some of the other team here at Solent, but we meet with Southampton University, the NHS, and with Public Health England every week. At the moment, we're meeting every other week. And actually, our numbers are really low and really have been quite low. We had a little bit of a time when the halls, there was a bit of an outbreak in halls, but actually the students were really good. They did what we asked them to do and they did self-isolate. Much the same was true up the road. So there's very little evidence that our students have impacted on the local community. In fact, I don't think there's any evidence that we've impacted on the local community. So that's really, really, really good. And the whole board are really pleased with that and with the way that our students have handled themselves. With a few exceptions, over the odd party here and there, but largely speaking, our students have been really, really good and have done what we've asked them to do. And so we're really, really grateful for that.
Many universities across the UK are having serious financial issues, so are the students. Many of them are struggling paying for their rent due to the lack of employment, and they're actually obliged to pay for their rent even if they're not allowed to return back to their houses or accommodation. They're having issues with paying for tuition fees as well, just because they're not receiving the education at the level they were supposed to, and they're lacking of being able to use equipment. They can't use the facilities properly, or the libraries and gyms. Students have been protesting about that, and the government has actually picked up on that issue due to our joint campaign with NUS and other SUs across the UK. The campaign is called Students Deserve Better, and due to that campaign, the government has issued £50 million of hardship funds for students.
We've administered about £260,000 of our own hardship funds. Students are struggling financially because obviously they're losing jobs and their parents are often not able to support them in the way they might have done previously because they've maybe lost their own jobs. We've had additional funding from the Office for Students and we're administering that at the moment. So we've given out another 75 digital bursaries, for example, they're each £400. So far we've given about 45 additional hardship grants of £500. So we're just sorting our way through all of that at the moment and trying to make sure that the students that need it most get that money as quickly as possible.
We've been able to provide a click and collect service in the current lockdown as well for our print books. Print books are still needed by students either because it's material that isn't available in electronic format or quite often, unfortunately, is just way too expensive for us in electronic format. And we've seen somewhere in the region of 550 print books get borrowed in January alone this year, which I think is better than we were expecting given the drastic restrictions there are in place at the moment. It just provides a good complement to that online provision that the library is kind of our bread and butter these days, really.
So over Christmas, we sent out goodie bags to students who were in our residences. They cost about £10. We worked with Sodexo and they had all sorts of like hot chocolate and biscuits and different things in that. Plus we put a Christmas card in it for all of the students so that they had contact details, so they knew who they could contact between Christmas and New Year. And one of our team was available answering emails between Christmas and New Year as well, and so were LTU and IT. So any immediate problems and issues we were able to deal with and solve, which was good. And we also offered support to the residences with their own students that were struggling between Christmas and New Year. We're looking and thinking about what we do at Easter now, so hopefully we'll be able to do something nice. And we extended that out to private halls as well. We didn't know the names of those students, but we had rough numbers from each of the private halls, so we sent them selection boxes and again a Christmas card with the details of the support that was available.
We've also been able to support students who aren't living locally. We've mailed print books out to them if they needed that. We have 120 laptops available for students to borrow, and I'm happy to say that almost all of those are on long-term loan at the moment to students so that they can use them for their studies and their assignments. We even had to send out a laptop to a poor student living on the Isle of Wight. She was involved in a house fire just after Christmas. Happily, nobody was hurt, but it did actually damage her PC. So with the support of our colleagues in the States, we were able to organise a courier service, and we got a laptop out to that particular student within a few days of her contacting us. So what's nice to know is that, the students, despite not being physically on campus, they're still engaging with the library service, and they're certainly making really good use of the digital resources that the library is providing for them.
So we are continuing to support our students. It's not easy. We're getting lots of complaints from students that they don't necessarily understand about fees, asking for fee rebates, which would have very little benefit to them really, and obviously would have a significant impact potentially on us. But what we do is try and be really positive about what they can get. So the Transformation Academy and the fact that their work is online and their academics are working hard to support that, funding that's available, the study support that's available. So we're trying to give them all the positives of what we have done, the rent rebates, for example, and then hopefully they can see and understand what we're trying to do. And to be fair, largely speaking, I think most students do understand that there is a sense that we are all in this together and that we're doing the best that we can to support them. If anybody's got any questions, if you'd like to know any more about any of the work that we're doing, then by all means just get in touch with me. Thank you very much.